Hello, I'm King Link and it's time for the Humble Choice March 2020 review. It's another month, and while I know some people are already writing off this month due to lack of recognizable names in the choice, let's look at the games released this month. I actually found a couple of really great gems here, so let's get to it. If you're a first-time viewer, the fast version of the rules is I play every game for 1 hour. The exception this month is 3 games I've previously reviewed: My Friend Pedro, Planet Coaster, and Exapunks, which are in the bundle. I'll go over each game, taking about a minute per game, and I'll try to tell you who is going to enjoy the game. At the end, I'll have 5 games I can recommend and 5 games I would recommend skipping. With that out of the way, let's just get into the reviews. Let's start with My Friend Pedro, the first game I've reviewed previously. What do you get when you cross Deadpool with, well, Deadpool? Yeah, it really does feel like this is a Deadpool game at times. You dual-wield pistols along with other weapons, kill enemies, and the story gets pretty weird at some points. It's a great game, and I know people will enjoy it, but, well, the game is fun. It's very short, like 5 hours, and it almost feels like the game runs out of unique ideas by the end. Don't get me wrong, this is a really solid 5-hour game, but it's set up to be almost an arcade game, so you're supposed to speedrun it or master the gameplay by replaying the levels multiple times to prolong the experience, and the levels are about 5 to 15 minutes. The thing is, this isn't a really big thing for me or most players. I will recommend the game to people who like surreal humor, just want a fun 5-hour experience, love leaderboard chasing, speedrunning, and combo systems, or just want something that feels really unique. I gave this game a 3.5 out of 5, but I also recognize that it's probably not going to be many people's favorite game. Still, it's a very solid opener for this month. Planet Coaster, and again, a game I've reviewed previously. This is a theme park simulator, similar to Roller Coaster Tycoon. If you like that series, you're gonna love this one. It's a modern take on it by people who really wanted to make a better version, and I think they've succeeded. If you've played Planet Zoo or Jurassic World Evolution, it's made by the same guys, Frontier Developments, and they found a way to make it interesting to design theme parks. Now, there are some rules that you're going to have to learn outside of the game, especially how to min-max your way to success. But with workshop support, tons of content, and the ability to ride each ride and coaster whenever you want, this game's really fun. I obviously am going to recommend this game to anyone who likes roller coasters, engineering, or designing stuff, but also to anyone who enjoyed 2 Point Hospital from a couple months ago, or just likes simulators in general. I realize this isn't for everyone, but it's a huge title. I had a blast playing this one, and could easily slip back in. I'll be covering Planet Zoo soon, because I actually enjoyed this one so much I want to see the next thing that they did. F1 2019. Yes, this is last year's model, and I was ready to tell people how brutally hard this game is going to be, and it's going to make you suffer if you make any mistake, mostly due to the few games I played of this series about 5 years ago. I'll be honest though, I was wrong. F1 2019 is welcoming to new players, and it's great because as a sport, Formula 1 is interesting. You get everything here: the feeling of speed, a pretty solid physics engine. It also has adjustable difficulty and seems easy to play with a controller, so you won't need a full wheel setup. It's a little bit arcadey. It kind of reminds me more of Project Cars than Dirt Rally 2, in that new players aren't going to be punished from the first moment. There's also what seems like a lot of stories, talking to the press, teammates, and more. The graphics are solid, and it could be a lot of fun. You'll be playing the game for the racing though, but there's a lot of stuff around that racing in the game. If you're a fan of F1, a fan of racing, or just want something a little different, check this one out. But I want to stress this is for hardcore racing fans who want to race Formula 1 cars. There's not really anything outside of that. Theyll Seal Arbiter's Mark. Rough name to say, but this is our first hidden gem of the bundle. Let me just tell you who's going to like this. It's Final Fantasy Tactics. Period. If you like Final Fantasy Tactics, you'll love this game. Theyll Seal is a strategy RPG where players level up by using actions in battles. There's a big bombastic story about succession, at least that's what it seems to be about in the first hour. There's a ton of gameplay and more. Everything is turn-based, and you have the typical classes of RPGs, though in this case Warrior is mercenary, Black Mage is a wizard. You kind of get the idea. Slight name changes though. This is a little weaker in some ways than Final Fantasy Tactics, but it's a great attempt, and while games like Disgaea 5 are my personal favorite strategy RPGs, this is closer to Final Fantasy Tactics than any other game in the genre. I mean, if you have played Final Fantasy Tactics, you already have an opinion on that. Go with it. And if you haven't and you want to see why people like that series, check this one out. Battle Chasers Nightwar. Battle Chasers has one of the worst openings with an exposition dump with just lines and lines about characters you don't care about yet. But wait, this is another hidden gem. If you get through that opening, you'll find an amazing RPG. This is an old school RPG with a lot of great designs and interesting choices. There's tons to talk about here. Exploration areas that allow you to walk around freely in a dungeon, good solid map design, a great battle system, beautiful graphics, great characters and enemy designs, and an interesting story outside of those opening minutes. The dungeon that I got to at the end of my hour had 3 different difficulties as well. That was a real shock. The thing is, I had a blast playing this game for an hour, and it was well crafted and interesting enough that I can imagine it's going to hold my attention for the whole game. It's supposed to be around 30 hours or more, so there's a good length here as well. As I said, this is a hidden gem of the month's choice, and it's the game I'm most excited to play more of. This is easily recommendable to anyone who enjoys RPGs, especially turn-based RPGs, and worth picking up. Exapunks. Last month's humble choice had Shenzhen.io. I said I loved it, I said it was a programming game, and claimed that I would probably be the only one who liked it. I'm going to have to repeat most of that again. Exapunks is a game released last year from Zachtronics. You program assembly into little exas, and they execute your program to do tasks. Essentially everything you did in Shenzhen.io you do here, but there's a better graphical representation and more interesting tasks. I think Exapunks is actually the best game that Zachtronics has ever put out, with Magnum Opus and Infinifactory being the only competition to that crown. So this is the same as last month. If you like programming games, if you enjoy programming, if you like Shenzhen.io, if you want to do something very different than other games, or you just want an interesting logic puzzler, check Exapunks out. I love this game, but I'm going to fully admit it's probably my guilty pleasure and probably specifically tailored to me. Turok. Oh, Jesus. This game's ugly. I know it's a port of an N64 game, but there's some very interesting and smart game design here. But this is released in 2016, not 2020, and dear God, what was the idea of this? They call it a remaster, so maybe that's the simple idea, but if that's the case, why not make it look better? Everything good in this game is related to the original game design, and I'd love to go over the original game after playing this in a future video when talking about just the design. But there's also a lot wrong here. You can't use a controller on any menu, which makes no sense as the original used a controller. There's awful jumping puzzles that belong back in 1997, where it only should exist. The level design can be a bit shit, and they've actually said that they've improved it, and the character models and enemy models look horrendous. Almost everything looks pretty bad in this game. Also, you can't switch ammo types. I mean, why not? I get that some people demanded a port of Turok, and okay, for those people, I understand the nostalgia. This isn't a terrible game, but I also don't see a reason to play this in 2020 unless you want to give up 20 years of modern advances in first-person shooters. I think the game is more welcoming than Project Warlock from last month, but I also think that is a better game, and I also hated that game. I recommend this game purely for Turok fans, and that is why it's a bad inclusion for a humble choice. Yet, I do admit I did have some fun playing it, so yeah. Death's Gambit. It's kind of hard not to call this game Dark Souls, when the start of the game has you design a soul. So yes, it's 2D Dark Souls. I dislike Dark Souls due to the obscene difficulty in it, yet I like Death's Gambit. It's not too hard, not too easy, and still a lot of fun. This is kind of what you would expect from a 2D Dark Souls. There's a lot of exploration, interesting systems, and solid design here. The art is good, the characters are interesting, tons of items to collect such as equipment and more. However, there are a couple of glitches from what I saw, but not enough to ruin a fun experience. The story seems to be starting strong, but it's mostly told in flashbacks as you die, and it's not the best, but it works. Overall, this game is similar to Blasphemous, and that was a solid game too. If you like that one, I recommend you check this one out in some format. Also check it out if you like Metroidvanias, Dark Soul type games, though it probably isn't going to be too difficult to master from what I saw so far. Even though I'm not a Dark Souls fan though, I might come back to this one, so consider that, it's good. 1980X. This is awful. The game starts with a pretty weak beat-em-up level out of Final Fight with infinite continues. If the game was only that, I probably would have said it's fine, a bit weak, but that's not this game. You get to the end of the level with what seems like a boss sitting on a shelf, and instead of fighting him, the game changes. Instead, you get a 5-minute opening monologue with cutscenes, credits, and a character waxing nostalgically about arcade games or the 80s in general. This is really just a storybook with a few levels. It's not even a visual novel because you make no choices with the story. Instead, you hear a poorly told story from the main character with no way to skip it, and then eventually get to play a level in a game. Now, I've heard this game is about 90 minutes long, and I believe it because I've already reached the last game in the series in just an hour. But I don't see myself finishing this outside of maybe trying to get some achievements. The biggest crime is that they could have made levels into actual games. It would have lasted longer and been more interesting, even if the games weren't that good. Instead, just as each game gets interesting, that game stops to go back to the story. Why? I mean, just why? I'll recommend this for people who don't actually want to play games, but instead wax nostalgically about gaming. I really just want my hour back. Niffelheim. Okay, I'm just going to come out and say this. Someone at Humble definitely has a Viking fetish. I think I can say that with 100% certainty. This is the 4th or 5th Viking-related game in the 4 months of Humble Choice we've had. It depends on how you want to score Warstone TD. With that being said, I don't know if I really get Niffelheim. I don't even know which genre to really place it in. It's probably a survival game with a focus on resources and materials and such, but I don't really see anything I was surviving against. There's a lot of grindy tasks, but overall not a very interesting game from what I was seeing. It wasn't a terrible game, mind you, just a bit dull. Nothing seems to actively be playing against you, and while there is multiplayer, the game allows single player with or without AI, and I played without AI just so I could see more of the game. Maybe AI is going to make this more interesting. Like I said though, I don't think I really understand this game. I understand the goal, I read through the tutorial, I'm just not sucked into it. The thing is, for survival fans who want a more chill game, or people who love Vikings, I'm sure there's a fan base for this game. I just don't understand the game in that first hour. And dear God, I bet you we're going to get another Viking game next month. AI War 2. So a little quick backstory, I hated the first AI War, Fleet Command. It was micromanagement hell and not that much fun. AI War 2 is a completely different game. Okay, not exactly different, but it's clear Arkin learned a lot from its previous game and the reaction to it, and this time around there's more of a focus on just building fleets and clearing areas than necessarily dealing with each ship in the fleet. You build a factory, have a fleet command, and given time your fleet will be at full strength even if they aren't on the same planet. It's nice. There are several quick start scenarios, the opening one seems to be pretty easy from the sound of it, and the tutorial makes me think it's a game I can tackle. Now, hold on, that tutorial did take me close to 50 minutes, and it feels like there's a ton more to learn and do with the game, so don't expect to dive headfirst in and become a god. Still, you can learn, grow, and get comfortable with this game far faster than it was in the past. This is a good choice for 4X fans and people who want to focus on space battles, but the game is more for strategists than visceral game players. It's probably at the bottom of my list this month, but it's still a worthy inclusion. Etherborn. What if MC Escher made a puzzle game? That's kind of the idea behind Etherborn. You're able to move between floors, walls, and even ceilings as long as there's these rounded curves to them. Not a bad concept. There are good levels and designs here, but that's most of this game. Each level has a trick or a concept that it's going to play with. There's two big problems. First, if you make a wrong step on some levels, sometimes you're going to have to retrace most of the level, and that can be quite frustrating. Second, I was on the final level here after an hour, at least I believe so. There is a new game plus that reuses all the levels a second time, but this game is obscenely short. It's a good start for a game, but needs a lot more content to be something special. Though, if you do like perspective puzzles and games where it'll bend your mind a bit, this is perfectly fine, just not a very strong choice this month. So that's the 12 games of the Humble Choice. Now, before we finish, with Humble Choice, you get a few bonus games. I'm going to go over them a bit quickly so players know what to expect. The first is a game called Space Routine, and it's a physics-based look at the life of the Jetsons, where you have to handle a bunch of meters similar to how The Sims works. The problem is this game moves way too fast, and the wacky physics don't work well. Having to play as 3 characters plus a baby is frustrating, especially when the game doesn't have any AI for you to use. There's also the fact that Space Routine wants you to keep everyone in the house to keep your family level high, so realize that just leaving the house for work or school hurts that family level. This is just an overly complicated system and needs a lot more work. It's a shame because The Sims was fun at one point and this could have worked well, but it's just not there yet. And you know, some YouTuber is going to show this, overact, and make this game look so hilarious. But it's not. It feels like this is a work in progress someone is showing off, not a finished game. And as a finished game, I honestly spent like 20 minutes on this before moving on. It's just not that enjoyable. It's not a huge negative for this bundle, but it's thrown in for free. It's also one of the weakest games of the month. The other bonus game this month is a demo called One Step from Eden. Now this is a combination of Slay the Spire and Mega Man EXE's battle system. It's pretty inventive and the concept is really solid, though I do think this game moves entirely too fast. If they slowed it down by about half, I think it would have been more entertaining, and it's only a demo, so once you hit the mini-boss at the end of the map, the game will end. That being said, the concept and execution here are really solid, and while I think the UI could probably be a little more fleshed out as well, I enjoyed this one. The game is coming out on March 26th, so if you want an early peek, it's free with a Humble Choice purchase. It's good, not great, but a fun taster and worth checking out. And that's the Humble Choice. Like I mentioned before, we do the best and the worst of the month, so if you buy 3 games, you know which 3 you probably should get, and if you have to skip 2 or 3 of them depending on your level, well, hopefully I'll help you out with that as well. Starting with the worst of this month, number 5, Niffelheim. I just don't get this game. I'm sure some people will like it, I'm sure this has a lot of depth, and it comes after the first hour. But I'm so lukewarm on this one, I'll put it as number 5. I'm just indifferent to this one. I don't actively hate it. Number 4, AI War 2. Listen, if you're a fan of AI War, understand I do like AI War 2. But there are 12 games this month, and I think this month has a lot of really solid content. AI War, though, is a really hard game to get into. It's a 4X without a real story, but it does have interesting combat. It's just not enough to recommend it over 7 other games to the general public. Number 3, Etherborn. Listen, Etherborn is here because it's short. I enjoyed my hour with Etherborn, yet I'm almost done with it in that hour, which is a big problem. I think it's a solid game, but there are, again, 8 other games that I think are better. That's the only problem. It's easily skippable as well. Number 2, Turok. Listen, Turok seems like it would be an impressive game in 1997, but it's no longer 1997, it's 2020, and this feels extremely dated. Turok came out the same year as Doom 2016, and I think you get that idea. The thing is, I did have some fun with this, but not enough to recommend this to anyone other than someone who already would own Turok. Sorry, Turok. And number 1. Yeah, there's only one game I hated this month. Still, I have to name names, and it shouldn't be a surprise. 1980X. It's too short, too unplayable, too weak to be recommended. I know some people like the graphics. I don't think that's enough to sustain a game. It's just not that good. I'm sorry to the devs, but this one is really weak. I used to visit arcades myself when I was young in the 80s, and while I have the nostalgia for that style, somehow this game didn't even trigger that. Oh well. So that's my worst of the month, and with that said, it's time to switch gears and talk about the best. I'm actually really happy about this month. There was 10 out of the 12 games that could have been on the best list, and I avoided my personal bias for Exapunks, understanding that most people probably wouldn't love that game as much, and instead gave you games I think most people are going to enjoy. Starting with number 5, Theyll Seal Arbiter's Mark. You know, people love Final Fantasy Tactics, I get it, and you know what? That's what you get from Theyll Seal. It's worth checking out, especially if you're getting more than 3 games. It doesn't hurt that there isn't a version of Final Fantasy Tactics already on PC, so this is a great substitution. PS Square, you can fix that. Do it. Number 4, Death's Gambit. I like this game, and I didn't think I would. It's fun, it's adventure, it's a Metroidvania, Dark Souls. One thing I didn't mention before is that when you die, you actually lose what is essentially your Estus Flask charges instead of losing your soul. So it's different even in that way. And really, it's a fun game. Number 3, Battle Chasers Nightwar. I love RPGs like a lot of people. I want to play more of this one as well. It's a good length, good gameplay. But actually, I'll say my buddy, who's extremely harsh on RPGs, but he still loves them, said he picked this one up. He had a great time with it. And I would say that's high praise just knowing him. Number 2, Planet Coaster. This might not be everyone's favorite game, but it's an extremely fun one. You get to build coasters, you get to ride them, and you get the feeling of running an amusement park or Disneyland. It's entertaining even if you don't want to design coasters. The Steam Workshop has you covered if you want a specific coaster as well. It's really well done. And finally, we have number 1, My Friend Pedro. It's short, there could be more content, but it's also extremely inventive and fun, and there's a ton of great moments in this game. I'm going to have to give it props for being so unique in an industry that really doesn't innovate that much. And I haven't mentioned F1 or Exapunks on either of these lists. They're both good games, both could be skipped, depends what you're looking for. This month has been an absolute joy to cover though. I was having a great time with 11 out of 12 of these games at some level, and the choices for the worst was harder than ever because everything was pretty damn good. So I can fully recommend this month, and I know some people are down on this one because they don't actually know these titles, but I can tell you, give most of these games a shot. There's some hidden gems all throughout this one. And with that said, it's time for me to go. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. I appreciate it, and ring that bell for notifications. Feel free to disagree with me on anything down in the comments or give me your own takes. Always glad to hear them. I'll be popping up 4 videos for you to check out. I did monthly reviews of games I played recently in the same format as this, just fast bite-sized reviews. I also have video reviews of Exapunks, My Friend Pedro, and Planet Coaster, so if you want to hear more about any of those, click the links. Until then, I'm King Link, and thanks for watching.